Tattoo artists of Reddit, what was the most hard-no moment of your career? I was asked to put a full-fledged erect penis on someone's back, right above his ass crack, veins and all. I would have considered it, but there was some heavy breathing involved and ... Yeah, no, I do not want to spend hours and hours lovingly fulfilling your dicking fetish, thanks very much. 18-year-old girl wanted her considerably older BF's name just above her vagina for her first tattoo. Hard no, and had to explain why it wasn't a good decision. My dad was a tattoo artist in the 80s/90s. He was really passionate about doing good artwork, especially mythological creatures. Dragons and Pegasus were both specialties of his. He refused to do partners' names. When we needed cash, he would do a bit of work in a bigger shop where he would have to basically ink whatever the customer wanted. He used to affectionately call it wearing himself out. I had a conversation with my tattoo artist about this. He said he wouldn't do any instant tough guy tattoos, mainly face, neck or hand tattoos, unless the person already had a good deal of coverage on other parts of their body. It's not the whole shop's policy, but my friend won't do names unless it's their children. They could have it tattooed over, but they'd still forever know what's underneath it, and the shop doesn't do removals. Story time. I was in the shop shooting the shit and looking through the books, while my buddy was in the chair getting some new ink. Young couple walks in. They're maybe 19-20 years old and pawing each other to the point that I thought they were going to fall down and have sex right there on the floor. Girl says we need matching Bobby and Becky forever tattoos with hearts and flowers. Artist, also a friend, doesn't even look up. No. Go away. You been together what? 1 month? 2? Come back in 5 years. The girl argued for about a minute and then they left. Artist, I hate doing cover-ups of my own work. My aunt's cat is 19, almost 20. He's older than me, has walked this earth for 3 years more than I have. He's pretty much healthy and living, and other than being quiet and not moving all that much, he's fully, if not a little slowly, operational. My aunt has already had to bury her 16-year-old 3-legged collie. I don't know how I'll handle losing Coco too. I love that cat. Things like this make me miss my girl even more. I said goodbye to my best friend of almost 16 years just a little over a month ago, and the pain is still so fresh. My house and my heart are so empty. I always told her to please outlive me, because life without her is no life at all. Unfortunately, that's now how things work out. We had a cat live into his 20s. He started off as an outdoor barn cat. We never had cats in the house. My dad wouldn't allow it at the time. We had a big problem with moles in our yard and they'd leave big mounds of dirt everywhere. This cat, named Alex, would patiently wait by a molehill until one crawled out and he'd pounce it. He would eat the whole mole, but after a while he was eating so many moles that he would just eat the meat portion and leave the skins. This really impressed my dad, and once Alex reached 10+, my dad let him stay in the house during winters as they were getting hard on him. Then later he was just a full-time house cat in his later years. My family had a cat like this months before. His name was Tom. When he died he was probably 30. This cat was a survivor, torn completely apart by a Seattle. Guts everywhere and all. Next time he was torn apart by a bobcat, we spent $6,000 to have him fixed up. The oldest cat we had lived to be 24. I grew up with him and felt a void open up when he passed away. He was a ginger named Oliver and he was a cuddly sweetie from day one to his last. Miss him always. Supposedly the average lifespan of house cats has more than doubled since the 1980s. It's possible that it's tripled or close to quadrupled depending on relative estimates. One of our cats lived to be 21. She was really kicking until the end, too, and made damn sure you knew when she entered the room. I think she survived that long out of pure spite for our other 2 cats. She really reminded me of a human that lives into old age like that, in many ways. In a way, that cat is a real fighter to live up to that age. Respect. But seeing this animal in its end days really makes me uncomfortable. I had to say goodbye to my cat 3 weeks from now. He had a polyp in his ear that impacted his balance, his respiratory system, and needed heavy surgery to be removed. Being a 16-year-old cat, I was more scared to what the surgery would do to him, knowing that I'm 21 years old and that I live really far from where my cat was. So we tried an alternative treatment to ease any pain so he could enjoy his sunset weeks. Well, in the next week, my father found him not being able to breathe at all, fighting with air. At one point he managed to breathe again but refused to eat after that. Still curious about food but not wanting the slightest bit in his mouth. Of course, for me it was a sign of the end. I still ask myself if I could have given him some months with the surgery, but he doesn't need it anymore. Looking at this old cat only makes think of the last days I had with mine. Sorry, I know it's not right place to write a sad comment. I just wanted this out of my head. Have a great day, everyone. I was painting an old lady's house and her cat was 20 years old. It was black and it left patches of fur that at first I thought it was those small furry feathers that little baby ducks have, but it was just the fur of the cat, lol. It also puked her and diarrhea shat on a few tools and it smelled like hell. Poor lady struggled just to get up from her chair, so I cleaned it up. That's what my cat Alice would look like if he had lived that long. Very similar markings. He died of lymphoma at only 8. You are very lucky. My family had to sell our ranch, and when we did, we brought in the 2 cats, brothers from the same litter, that had been born there 25 years ago, to give the very old boys a nice life in retirement after 2.5 decades of mousing. One lived to 27, the other to 28. George and Lyle were the gentlest, sweetest, most affectionate cats I've ever had. My kitty was 23 years old and went onto acute kidney failure and went quickly. He had kitty dementia though and would wander the house at 3 a.m. with a worried Harold, like trying to find his people but getting lost through the house. Such a sweet, adult boy. Please don't put it down, give it an awesome remainder of its life. I'm TBH growing a second opinion of cold killing animals just because they're too old and humans don't want to take care of them. Unpopular opinion: there's a point in an animal's life when euthanasia is a kindness. I love animals, but I question a lot of the posts about super old cats and whether the owner is being humane keeping them alive. Wow, I never had a cat live past 19. Frown, that cat's amazing. Yeah, I must love it so much. My cat cost me 10 grams in total. Had cancer, 3 legs, a cyst under its right eye. It was abused as a kitten before I had him, and he never meowed ever until a day before we had to put him down. Sounded like a cat who had been smoking cigarettes every day. I've never cried so hard for anything in my life. R.I.P. Shanti. Enjoy your time with him, her. Tie for the post. I would quit my job and life off my cryptocurrencies to spend every waking moment with this beautiful soul. Cats are my children and I'll go the lengths of the world for them. Oh my heart, I hope my cats live to be that age. After losing my doggo far too soon, he was only 5. Fuck cancer. I find myself watching them like a hawk for any sign of sickness. My cat was supposed to be euthanized 10 or so years ago. He was a test subject at a Big Ten college. I think he's in his late teens, still going strong with 6 toes on his feet. My cat is 9 months old and the first pet I've ever had. I lose sleep about bi-weekly thinking about how I'm gonna have to live in a world without him someday, and I have no idea how I plan to cope with that, ever. My grandmother's cat was 28. One tooth left, completely deaf and had half a foot on one side. Total sweetie, very kind and wise temperament. Her name was Fiver 'cause my nan bought her for a fiver, £5. How come many kinds of animals can live to twice or more their species' average life expectancy compared to us? Why don't we see people get to 160? Is it that the average life expectancy of these animals is actually lower than it could be, in comparison to humans, because they don't have the same quality of healthcare that we do? This makes me so sad. I had to put my 18-year-old cat down this last December, and seeing this beautiful girl and how lucky you are to have had her for so long makes me miss my Cosmo even more. I wish I could have had him for as long as you've had your sweet Margot. I lost one of my cats last week, adopted him 9 years ago, age unknown. He was a rescue street cat. The past 2 years he declined, to the point where he couldn't remember where the litter box was most days. He also had a terrible case of stomatitis and his gums were bleeding, his teeth were a mess and needed to be pulled, but the vet was concerned he wouldn't survive being put under. I held him in my arms wrapped up in his favorite blanket while the vet gave him the shot, and I rocked him alone in the room while he passed away peacefully, and for some time afterwards. I was devastated, but I know I made the right decision. R.I.P. Oliver, you were the goodest boy. What a sweet baby. My old girl is 15 now, and a few months ago I told my parents that I feel she's having trouble seeing. They didn't quite believe me until they took her to the vet for a checkup and discovered she's blind. It's heartbreaking. She pretty much knows her way around since she's lived in this house since she was 6 weeks old, but sometimes the dog wants to okay with her and gets her all turned around. Lol. She's doing okay. She is on thyroid medication and getting lots of love, but I really don't know how long she has left. My last cat that I had till 15 was killed by the dog next door and was very difficult to deal with, so I'm anxious because she's the same age now. Our 21-year cat sings the songs of her people from 3 a.m. Will bitch slap our 7-year cat if she plays too rough. Will bitch slap the husky if he dates to play with her, thinks the king-size bed is hers and therefore acts like it. Will sleep on my pillow, because the humans have deigned to sleep on her bed. She doesn't meow, she only chirps, and purrs like a motor, and is fond of cold places, and loves to perch on shoulders and butts. She is still almost jet black save for 2 white whiskers. She's pretty awesome. So my cat is deaf and she's reaching 20 years old soon enough. She's super healthy because she does not have any stress, and I believe she will live a long time since the major cause of death in cats is heart problems, mostly due to stress. Oh, they made it to 29. I got my cat in middle school. He lived until 5 years past me leaving college. Their lifespans can make me alongside you for so many milestones. Wouldn't trade my time with him for the world. I believe that animals can live much longer than what is said. But just like us humans, feeding them processed foods is what shortens their lifespans. Letting them eat too much shortens their lifespan. I told my aunt a long time ago, like 15 years ago, to only feed her dog table scraps. That dog is past her life expectancy and still going strong. And I mean strong. Moral of the story: fasting is okay, table scraps is okay, and some leg work, exercise, is great. And also, a happy cat, who purrs like a banshee, will also live longer. These are just my opinions. It's worked for me. Last story. My buddy John once had a cat named Lucky for a long time. Well, one time the cat had a tumor on its face. The cat was smart and knew what to do to cure itself. One day John opens the door and the cat ran out and was gone for a week or more. Guess what? The cat was hiding in a random garage, fasting and sleeping. Cat came back cancer-free. Its body healed itself. true story, this is not made up. In a way, that cat is a real fighter to live up to that age. Respect, but seeing this animal in its 10 days really makes me uncomfortable. I had to say goodbye to my cat 3 weeks from now. He had a polyp in his ear that impacted his balance, his respiratory system, and needed heavy surgery to be removed. Being a 16-year-old cat, I was more scared to what the surgery would do to him, knowing that I'm 21 years old and that I live really far from where my cat was. So we tried an alternative treatment to ease any pain so he could enjoy his sunset weeks. Well, in the next week, my father found him not being able to breathe at all, fighting with air. At one point he managed to breathe again but refused to eat after that. Still curious about food but not wanting the slightest bit in his mouth. Of course, for me it was a sign of the end. I still ask myself if I could have given him some months with the surgery, but he doesn't need it anymore. Looking at this old cat only makes think of the last days I had with mine. Sorry, I know it's not right place to write a sad comment. I just wanted this out of my head. Have a great day, everyone. We had a cat live into his 20s. He started off as an outdoor barn cat. We never had cats in the house. My dad wouldn't allow it at the time. We had a big problem with moles in our yard and they'd leave big mounds of dirt everywhere. This cat, named Alex, would patiently wait by a molehill until one crawled out and he'd pounce it. He would eat the whole mole, but after a while he was eating so many moles that he would just eat the meat portion and leave the skins. This really impressed my dad, and once Alex reached 10+, my dad let him stay in the house during winters as they were getting hard on him. Then later he was just a full-time house cat in his later years. People, when your kitty gets too old to groom itself, please help out with a gentle brush every now and then. Every day is better, but now and then is good, too. Without regular grooming, mats form in the fur which pull on the skin and cause pain. And also the skin gets dirty and irritated and itchy. This also applies to overweight cats and cats with other mobility issues. If your cat hasn't been raised with regular brushing and doesn't seem keen to start, begin with just one swipe a day and then reward the cat with a treat. Over time the cat should tolerate it better and maybe even come to enjoy it. I find that this kind of brush works well with all hair types, although you may want to experiment with different brushes to see what your cat likes the best. Also, grooming gloves are an option for cats who aren't huge fans of brushing. I was a tattoo artist and I was asked to draw a dog with a human head, shark fins, cat legs, and a lizard tail. At first I went along with it, but I asked to make sure that was what he wanted. He then said give it a D. I just asked him to leave. This was a few years ago and still remember it very clearly. When I got my first tattoo I complimented my artist's collection of the Virgin Mary designs. He laughed and said people were shocked that he was Jewish when they saw them. I asked if that was ever a problem. He said, "Nope, I always take payment first anytime someone wants a swastika or something, then halfway through I tell them if they still want it. It's just a job, but if they don't, they leave with half a hate symbol and I don't give refunds." I always love that story. Not a tattoo artist, but when I was in my early 20s, I was with my cousin and I was a very racist sob back then. We went to this biker club type of tattoo artist she found. The guy had a swastika on his chest and a Confederate flag covering his entire back. I asked him if he would tattoo me a swastika on the back of my hand and then on the same arm, tattoo the SS German symbol. He looked me up and down and said, "Son, you ain't tough enough to rock those. If I did that, you would be constantly fighting someone or end up dead." Apparently there has to be a look for people to get those type of tats. Lol. Now as a 40 years old very non-racist person, I am so fucking thankful he said what he said and refused to do it. Older me would have hated younger me and regretted it deeply in my later years. not a tattoo artist, but my friends are. The one that sticks out in mind was this cash-blue-side type of 18-year-old white girl went into his shop and asked him to tattoo her knuckles, neck, and do a full sleeve. The reason he denied it up front is because he knew she was basically attempting to ruin her social life and be denied jobs forever just because of it.